welcome to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, I am J Cool. I post interesting videos such as daily news, entertainment, filming, so you need to subscribe.
Phoenix F. It's 10:02. Welcome back to Let the People Talk. Thanks, Paddy. Our guest on the program this morning, State Council John Sangwa, joins us this morning. There's a question here from somebody on Twitter. Thank you very much, by the way, to at Tom Your Designer, who says the comprehensive urban development plan for Lusaka seemed to address these things. Over 15 years have passed, and it seems this document is just gathering dust in some offices. Issues to do with legal institutional enhancement for the Lusaka City Council are, he follows this up by saying, what has delayed the implementation of this development plan, or we just need to look at developing another plan?
You know, it's not, it's a general disease, okay? We're not short of ideas. That is not the only plan. There are several plans. So the challenges to our problems are known and solutions are known, but we always fall short of implementing those programs. So you're talking about a 15-year, something that was developed 15 years ago. You already have a starting point. The problem is there political will to be able to introduce that? But again, how many residents of Lusaka actually know about the plan? Okay, it is in situations like this that we call for the implementation of these plans. Otherwise, it is one thing to come up with these plans, and it's another thing to have them implemented. We know what to do. We just have to get on with the job and implement these issues.
So is it, because it's not someone else who says, in terms of the obstacles that are hindering the implementation of what people would say is an effective plan, what are some of those obstacles that hinder the implementation? Is this purely just, sitting on a table somewhere and nobody seems to give a...
I'll give you my opinion.
Yeah.
I think it is the inability to put the right people in the right places. I think that's the problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because
you see that there is a saying, institutions are as good as the people. If you put bad people in, you get what you've put in. You put good people, you know what you get in the end. So this country's problem is not ideas. It's always been about implementing those ideas.
Okay. If you want to get in touch with us, you can 226-841-0978, 895-895. Let me pick a call. Hello, good morning. Okay, thanks. How are you? What's your name? What's your name? Okay, Lawrence, go ahead.
Yes, I have a legal question to Mr. Sasa. Mr. Sangwa, the issue of the PF self-loss and parent court. Is it legal for Mansa to be making decisions regarding the party? Okay. Number two, my second question is, when matters are active before court, okay, when an injunction has been discharged, okay, does it mean whatever Mansa did, is it legally backing? Because we've seen him being given state police, being protected, and this isn't accepting Mansa's nominations, rejecting other functions, and these things illegal, okay? Clearly, this is the issue of mismanagement of the situation, because this court started going back in October last year. There are no measures. Now the government has implemented the federal instrument. Okay, is it too late for now? Because this is purely lack of basic health. That's why the issues of cholera, we know this clause. But why they keep on fighting the effects of cholera as the roots of cholera?
Okay, Lawrence. All right, thanks. I can tell there were two very well thought out questions and one just to appease all of us. Do you want to, is that something that you want to go through?
No, I wouldn't want to go through. I mean, the matters are in court. I may have a lot to argue, but I think all that I have a lot to say, but I think whatever I have to say is something that has to be reserved in the right platform, and the right platform is the court. I can't begin to discuss legal matters that are pending before court here. Yeah, so.
Okay, here's somebody else who says, as a citizen, do I have locus standing in my desire to have MPs banned from claiming to bring constituency development?
Come again?
Do I, as a citizen, have locus standing in my desire to have MPs banned from claiming to bring constituency development?
Not banned, but you have the right to move the court as a citizen. In fact, what has happened is that the Constitution is so generous. It gives the right to any citizen to move the court, especially if there is an alleged violation of the Constitution. You don't need to be affected personally, but as long as I can even bring up a case on your behalf, for example, though I'm not personally affected. But when you live in a particular constituency and you have an issue with your MP or whatever is happening, obviously you have standing because you've been affected directly or indirectly through that system. No, you can take the matter to court.
Okay.
But how long it will take for that matter to be concluded in court is another issue. Yeah.
Okay. Hello, good morning.
See?
Good morning, sir. What's your name?
This is Captain Solo from Ndola.
Okay, go ahead, Captain Sol.
Yes. Good morning, Council.
Morning, thank you.
Yes. I just wanted to learn if you could make the citizenry learn more about what we get to hear more happening in the West. You know, class action suits against corporations, especially here in Zambia, where we have these water purification companies who don't really take care of their network. We find water pipeless mixing with sewage blockages. Now, as communities, how can they learn about taking class action suits against these corporations?
Yeah, you can always do it. You know, sometimes I can't give a lecture right now, but I think when you see that there is something wrong, we can tell this is wrong. You consult a lawyer, and the lawyer will be able to navigate, will be able to advise you. Yes, such a suit is possible, because don't forget, there is also ZEMA, for instance, which is responsible for the management of the environment. So discharge of pollutants in areas where you're not supposed to be, I think it should be, an offense to that effect, and there are penalties.
And I think there is a court case,
yes.
Victor Nyasulu versus KCM.
That's right.
That was determined.
Yeah. So the laws
are possible.
Yeah, it is possible. Laws are there, but it is for the citizens to get actively involved, to be able to ask for something better. Okay. But if you sit back and nothing happens, nothing will happen. But it is time that citizens got involved in these things. They have rights, and especially if you can read and write. And today we're talking about Google. You can Google literally everything and anything. And if you're not clear, you can go to court and then work out some arrangements with the lawyers. I know we always come short when it comes to fees and so forth, but those are different issues. But certain cases like that is what we would call public interest litigation. That can be taken in the interest of the people. But it is important for the people in the forefront, directly affected or who have been affected, to take charge, to get involved in this process and try and find a solution. It is time that citizens got involved, because if you sit back and thinking that politicians will solve our problems, they won't. Okay, it is up to us to demand what is rightfully due to us, especially when they have promised to deliver certain things.
Okay. Here's a question from Sammy. Sammy says, my other take is, I've heard what you said, but my other take is that our citizens are to blame. For example, the drainage along Mosetunia Road is full of rubbish that is thrown there deliberately. So some of these issues are our attitudes as citizens. We create the problem.
That is true. You see, again, you check the Constitution. I think, I don't know if you can go through it. Yeah. I think it should be Article 47. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's why this instrument is very important. I emphasize on it because it tells you.
Article 47?
Yeah, I think it talks.
It's the electoral system.
No. I think it's talking about the duties of citizens. Yeah. So, governance is a two-way process. It's a partnership. between those we elect and ourselves as citizens. We have responsibilities as citizens. You know, for instance, you have a situation where somebody is eating maize.
Article 43. 43.
Yeah.
Responsibilities of citizens.
Yes, if you go down there.
A citizen shall be patriotic, pay taxes, protect and conserve the environment, and utilize natural resources in a sustainable manner.
Okay.
Maintain a clean and healthy environment.
That's right.
Yeah.
To maintain clean and healthy environment, that is a duty of a citizen. Okay? So, I mean, these are all things that I was talking about the fact that you need to know what to expect from government and what is expected of you. For example, government won't come into your premises to clean up your premises.
Sorry, but there are no penalties.
Pardon?
There are no penalties.
Yes.
To this. So
No.
I just had to throw that out there because as much as the Constitution says talks about responsibilities, it doesn't say anything about what happens if I don't protect and conserve my environment.
But but you know that's why.
Sorry, I'm just.
It's an interesting point.
Yeah.
Yes, but you don't need you don't need penalties, okay? Because the Constitution is telling you these are your responsibilities as a citizen, okay? Before you ask anything from government, are you doing your part? Okay, it's a two-way process. Because, like I was talking about the cleaning your yard, for instance, government won't come into your yard to clean it up. It won't, because you have right to privacy. If you're a government officer wants to come into they need permission. That is why the environment where you stay is your responsibility to clean up. So there's a dual relationship. Government has its own obligation, and citizens have their own obligation. So when none of those things, when there's that lack of understanding, that's why lives are lost. Because you sit back thinking government will do it, and the people in government think you will do it, and in the process, nothing gets done, and we're where we are. There is value in in preventing things, in following rules, and in following the regulations and following the laws. There is value in that, and they are meant for a reason. They are not decorations. They are meant for a reason, and it is important for us to educate ourselves so that we know where our responsibilities begin and end, and when government responsibilities begin and end.
22684 0978895895. Kath says, while politicians can't solve all our problems, why then should they be? Sorry, Kath, I had to smile. While politicians can't solve all our problems, why then should they be criticized for their lack of solutions to problems? Where then is the balance to the situation?
Very simple. The problem is we elect political parties, right? Now, when we elect political parties, there are promises that are made. We remove when a political party comes to power, it makes certain commitments. The primary responsibility of most of these political parties when they're elected into power is the formulation of those policies. Now, when there is competition for power, political parties come up and say, we will do better. Okay? So we hold them to that. Now, doing better means that you'll be able to bring about better policies, and those policies will be, sometimes you may not even need better policies. The same policies, except that you go further and implement them. Okay? Our problems are invariably, we talk too much and we do very little. That is the problem. The earlier caller was talking about a 15-year plan, development plan. Why hasn't it been implemented? Okay? So it's not short of ideas. It is failure to implement. Okay? Now, it is also important in the next election, for example, to pay particular attention to what these politicians will be promising. First of all, hold them accountable. When you say, I'll do A, B, C, D, ask them, how are you going to do that? Don't just tell us what you will do, but also go further and tell us how you will do it. Unfortunately, we just end up getting excited about the fact, oh, I'll do this, and then we don't question it further. So the point is that the biggest challenge we face as a country, we talk, but very little in terms of action. I think we need to move further, talk less, and do more.
Here's Matale says about 4 areas in Osaka already known to be perennial cholera start points. Kanyama et al. Let's raise down these unplanned townships and pave way for a CBD expansion. We can then relocate the settlers to 15 miles where they can engage in agriculture. That's from Mata. Yeah.
Sure,
Yeah.
it's a solution.
Yeah.
Okay, but it cost you money, right? Now, who's going to do that? That can be done by the local authority. Yes, it's true. It's not rocket science. The problems are known. Okay, so these developments can be phased. For instance, you can even talk about it. For example, you say, okay, you take 100 plots, find a temporary place, build up decent structures, get the first 100 families from Kanyama, move them there, raise this, rebuild, possibly bring them back or whatever, but there has to be something to be done. Okay? Solutions are known. There are solutions. And then at the end of the day, we upgrade everything. But these shanty compounds, they're not new. They've always been there. Okay? So I hope we'll be able to take steps further rather than go beyond talk and be able to implement these ideas. Because the point to remember is this. I sometimes get surprised. Where we behave as though there'll be somebody else who will come from somewhere who is going to come and develop and change things in Zambia. There won't be. The responsibility to develop Zambia, to change Zambia, is that of Zambian citizens. We have a choice. I think we reach a stage, after 60 years of independence, we need to make a choice. Do we want to change, or do we want to continue the same level of mediocrity? Do we want to reject poverty, or we want to continue the same level of poverty? Now, if we chose to end poverty, it means we must do what is required to end that poverty, not just to give lip service to it, but to actually act on it. It is a choice we have to make. Either we continue the same path that we've been on for the last 60 years, or we make a choice to do things differently. And it can be done. It's a change of mindset that we need to do. And it is a collective effort. For example, we must all be united to say, okay, this is the way we want to go. And there has to be consensus, because there is no point. We are trying to raise money to upgrade a certain section of Lusaka, and somebody's busy stealing that money. It's counterproductive. So we have to make a decision. It has to be a collective decision. But if we don't have that collective decision, again, maybe after 5 years, we'll come back here. By the way, I won't accept the invitation to talk about cholera again. Anyway.
Okay. Okay. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning, sir. What's your name? Morning, what's your name?
Mr.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Ted.
Council, good morning.
Good morning, thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to find out from you, Council. I don't know whether you are going to discuss over these people who have been benefiting the money, like the Minister of Transport. Over this case, they wanted to be short, and they didn't whether because the right channel, because the previous they didn't claim those things. And the issue of Madam Mpili, the issue of Madam Mpili was also being declaimed again. So I've seen that these people, they are taking money, they are saying, no, it's a legal way. I don't know what you can talk about it, this. And the council, why is it so sometimes it takes so long, maybe that they get taken maybe 10 years, 20, you talk of those people, each matters, casting, and so on and so on. These cases have been pending. What could be the problem? Is the government who doing or COS? Because people are saying COS are very strict and so on, you bring the law down to very lacuna and so on and so on. And lastly, lawyer. I've seen some of these companies, especially like maybe NASCO and so on, these people, they don't deliver. We're supposed to super as the way I think, because like an individual person could become very difficult to sue those legal matters, very difficult. Like lawyers, where do you know for some of these things? Like these companies which are not delivering and so on, the talk of NAFTA, they are they're going to put a carry to up to now, we don't see anything. And the last three.
Okay, Mr. Antere, thank you very much. There's a lot of questions there. All right, do you wanna respond? I don't know where you want to begin from. Is it from the last point, which is suing companies?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can. I mean, citizens need to understand they have rights, okay? Because obviously, I mean, we always advise that, okay, the first step is to try and see whether you can reach a settlement or an understanding. And, there is always power in numbers. If there is a good number of people affected, it becomes easier to engage the companies to be able to do what they're expected to do. And it is only when they fail that is when, because given the stretched resources of our court system and the challenges which they face, going to court should be the last option. If actually you can engage and people can find a solution, that would be the most advisable route to take.
Okay, but there is someone, Nicholas. Nicholas says, in our area, the council doesn't provide water, garbage collection, roads are non-existent, and yet they bill us for ground rates. Is it wrong for me to refuse paying them purely on the basis that I'm not getting the service that you've asked me to pay for?
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not advocating for lawlessness here. Okay. There's a problem which you have correctly identified. Let's find a solution. It is up to the residents of that area because it's already a settlement anyway. It's already developed. Let's find a solution. Why, for example, are they collecting money but not providing services? Okay. There has to be a solution to that effect. So those are clear cases where you need to engage your local authorities and find a solution. There is another point about people collecting money. Now, I know a lot of lawyers have talked about these things. The bottom line is that it's not legal. Whatever has been done and everything else is, people can go to jail for this. And also these would be what they would be described as conspiracies to loot money from government. Okay? First of all those people, I know there have been settlements. All those settlements are illegal. Okay? That is siphoning money from the taxpayers. That is theft of public funds. You can do that. It is still a wrong, even if you have signed a consent order. It is still wrong because the law was never followed. There is a process. Yes, the law recognizes that I can report you to the police, right? And the police will arrest you, they'll prosecute you. But I must be mindful that when I do so in good faith, meaning that there is reason, there is cause for me to activate that particular process. Let me give you an example. Let's assume I have a vehicle and I believe that my vehicle has been stolen. And I report you to the police to say, okay, I believe this brother of mine, I suspect him is the one who has taken the vehicle. The police will arrest you. Now, they will prosecute you. Once you are acquitted, you have no right to sue me. You can't sue me. You cannot, although you have been acquitted, right? Because the bottom line is that there was reasonable, probable cause. I lost a vehicle. Was the vehicle stolen? Yes. Did I have the right to report to the police? Yes. Okay? So there is a requirement, first of all. It's not just an acquittal per se. It's not enough. Now, in the case of a nolle is not an acquittal. A nolle is simply saying, you know what? We are discharging you, but you're not free. If we have more information, we'll come back for you. So it's not an acquittal. For you to qualify for payment, there must be an acquittal, okay? And secondly, you must prove that there was no reasonable probable cause. Now, in the example I've given, if you prove that actually I don't even own a car, then you will succeed because that was malicious, okay? Because that was a lie. It's something that I did deliberately, okay? On that account, you can succeed. Now, some of all these people that have received money, some of them were genuinely arrested, offenses were committed, people's property or violence, some criminal acts took place. Now, when you get acquitted, in fact, they were not even acquitted. Therefore, they don't deserve to get not even a dime. Now, I have no problem. Government can do anything that they want, provided it is within the law. If there is evidence to the effect that some of these cases that were done should not have been done in the first place, what is required is that you're trying to depart from established legal requirements. What government should do then is to pass an act of parliament, which will now provide a mechanism for identifying those victims, a mechanism of computing the amount of money that must be paid, because you are now moving away from the general principles of law. But if you go strictly by law, those people do not deserve to get not even a single ngwe. They shouldn't get.
Okay. Let me use the example of the transport minister.
Yes.
I think he said something to the effect that a gun was pointed at him.
Yes.
And he went through maybe emotional, whatever you want to call it, and that's
Yes.
and then that's almost like I'm getting damages because I
Right.
went through a lot.
That's right.
Right.
Okay.
I mean,
But the question
at that
is,
point, do I not? Is that not a valid
but what
argument?
were the circumstances? People are not talking about the circumstances. It was a riotous situation. Okay? I remember that incident. Okay, people are moving. There was a mob moving, and the police needed to contain them. Okay? So, I mean, it's different if I just woke up from nowhere and boom, I'm pointing a gun in your face. That's different, but I'm not. It was a riotous environment. But I'm not saying that if for some reason you believe that is the case, fine. Your suit should be against the officer that pointed the gun in your face, not against the state. Yes. Now, it is up to that officer to come and defend himself and explain why he deemed it necessary to point a gun in your face. And if the state want, then the other officer will say, well, I am bringing in the government because I was doing this in the course of my duty. Okay? But the point is that you still have to go through your normal process. Prove it. First of all, you can't just allege, oh, I suffered trauma, what? You need evidence to prove that. Okay? Because we all react differently. Okay? If I've never seen a gun in my life, yes, maybe I may have that trauma. But if I have 10 guns in my house, hey, what trauma are you going to suggest that I suffered when I have a gun or guns of my own? I'm familiar to guns. Okay? So each case has to be taken on the basis of its own facts. You need to prove that. Yes, I went through this. I had to be treated for shock. I went for therapy. I spent so much for therapy, and so forth and so forth. Once you prove that, you now have to go and prove damages. Damages are still open to assessment. Now, even if the state wanted to pay, at least there's one aspect that they should have done. At least go for assessment, so that that assessment is determined by court. Not whereby the two parties agree, oh, we'll give you so much. What's the basis?
Is it worse that it's a sitting, and in some of these cases, it's sitting ministers?
Yes.
Is that worse? And when I say worse, I mean in the sense of, you want to walk in with equity, isn't it?
Yeah.
But how much equity are you walking in if you have the power of being a minister?
That is exactly the point. That is why, for example, we said, when you are president, you don't sue. You won't get sued, therefore you can't sue. Why? We are trying to prevent you abusing your position. And by the same logic, one can extend it. But although there is no bar, as a minister, yes, there is no bar that the minister. There is a bar to the president, but there is no bar to the minister. From a moral point of view, somebody might argue that way. But again, the problem you're going to have is that the statute of limitation is running. So by the time you cease to be minister, your cause of action will have expired. But you can still go to court. But you must insist that you go through the normal legal channels. You go through your case so that you appear before an independent and impartial judge who awards you that, not in some deal that is cut in some back room somewhere there where you dream up some figure. That is what makes it illegal. But push the envelope further. How are you going to treat Mumbipiri's case? Okay? How are you going to treat Mumbipiri's case? Legally, Mumbipiri can't get a dime. Right? Because there's reasonable probable cause. Somebody died. The fact that you get acquitted, you enter a nolle is inconsequential. Somebody died. Okay? The fact that they failed to prove it doesn't entitle you to damages. And secondly, you walked away with a nolle. Now, if you are paying people in the same circumstance, if you have already established that, then you should also extend to her. And that is what we mean. Then you are dabbing in lawlessness now. And everything now becomes arbitrary. And that is why laws are important. Laws are important. And that is why if you want to treat people as a special category of victims, pass a law so that it is open, it is above board, so that anybody can verify that. And that law will be passed by Parliament. Okay? Not these deals which they have been working on, and that is siphoning money out of the treasury, from already a bankrupt treasury anyway, you know.
Okay.
So,
because we've entered the realms of politics now, let's stay here. So, this gentleman by the name of Isaac Mwanza, he runs an organization. This organization advocates for naturalizing refugees.
yes.
And I don't know if you know this, but there was a billboard that they had put up, and this billboard was essentially a refugee advocacy billboard that was pulled down by local authorities.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's making the argument that it is a way of censoring, because the billboard, part of the messaging of the billboard was thank you to the president, etc., etc., etc. So now he's arguing that, look, this is censorship and infringement on people's right to express themselves. Is there a do you see anything valid in here? I mean, I can show you the billboard in case you've never seen it. I can show you.
No, I've but,
okay, you've seen.
But you have to pay.
Yeah.
You have to pay. Okay? Did they pay for it or not?
I believe they did, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the point is that this is a decision of the local authority. Okay? Because when you're talking about it, if you go under the
So I can read what the minister, what the statement from the ministry.
Sure, please.
According to a letter written to the Lusaka Town Clerk by the Ministry of Local Government Permanent Secretary, the Ministry of Home Affairs and Internal Security instructed that the advocacy billboard be taken down because the government was not consulted prior to its installation.
That's right. That is lawlessness. Yeah, that is clear act of lawlessness. This is a local authority matter. It has nothing to do with those ministers that you're talking about and PSs. They have better things to do than dealing in billboards. Okay? This is the breakdown of law and order that we're talking about. So meaning that your entire PS, your entire ministers don't even understand where their functions begin and end. This is something that should have been dealt with exclusively by the local authority. Okay? Laws are there, and that is why it is important to be able to respect them. That is lawlessness.
I see. Okay. 226-841 0978-895-895. Somebody called Peary says in America, police officers are jailed in their individual capacity if they are taken to court. Mm-hmm. This is in line with our earlier conversation about. Yeah. Okay. 226-841 0978-895-895. Let me take a call. Hello. Good morning. Okay, lost you on this line. Let's try this other line. Hello. Okay, lost you on both lines. 226-841 0978-895-895. If you'd like to get in touch with us this morning. Hello. Good morning. Hello. Good morning, sir. This is Radio Phoenix. What's your name?
Charles.
Okay, Mr. Charles, go ahead.
I have a problem. I stay in Minut, Tundi. Now the cancer there is not known. I've tried to check around. I haven't been helped.
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you, Mr. Charles. Okay. What's your question, Mr. Charles?
How do I get help to locate a counselor who's nowhere to be seen?
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Charles.
Well, I do hope after these discussions, people will go out and start identifying their counselors. By the way, this has always been a problem. It's not just a problem with councillors, it's also a problem with MPs. Okay? Previously, you have a situation whereby an MP gets elected by the people and it disappears. And the next time the councillor comes up is when he's asking for votes. And I remember in one of the provisions, I think it should have been Manakatwe Constitution Commission, there was a recommendation that members in that constituency should have the right to recall their MP if he's not performing. Okay? Those are all the options that we have to look at. But that is not in the Constitution, it's not in the law. But for now, let's make sure that we identify who our councillors are and hold them accountable. And most importantly, it also comes down to this thing where during the election, I know we have all been victims. When they are giving you a ballot paper, you have decided to vote a particular party. You say, councillor, this party. If you have voted, you favor one party, councillor, that party, MP, that party, president, that party. That should not be the case. You are given 4 ballots. The idea is that you make your individual decision. So, because if that was the case, then they'll just give you 1 ballot.
Exactly.
Yeah, the idea is that you cast 4 different ballots, and then you have to look at, and it also goes back to this issue about the quality of MPs and councillors that we choose. First of all the elected officials, starting from president, MP, and councillors, we need to take in interest in the people we are electing. Look at the caliber of the people you are electing as councillors. Will they be able to deliver? These are the challenges we are having. Don't give somebody a vote because it belongs to a particular party. Give that person because he has the requisite experience and capacity to be able to perform the functions of councillor, MP, and otherwise.
Okay. I've got Mobipiri on the line. Good morning, ma'am. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, State Council.
Good morning.
My fellow Mufulirans. We are very intelligent people from Mufulira. Did you know that, sir? I'm sorry, I joined the program a bit late because I was in the farm we are eating. I've just tuned in. But, Council, I have a question for you. When I was released on Nole, during my court case, a woman who was, I think it was a mistaken identity, where when we went for trial, my lawyers asked for the OB books from Kauma. And we learned that there were 2 people who reported to police when that incident happened. And in that OB book, there was a man who reported the incident and told the police that the woman who was in that vehicle, he would know him, he would know her because she was a chair lady in Mongo. So my lawyers asked the arresting officer to say, in this OB book, the woman who was in that vehicle reported, and there was a citizen who reported and said the woman who was seated in front of the car was a chair lady from Mongo. Does Mumbikiri stay in Mongo? The police couldn't answer. Now the woman who was in front of that car, where they claimed it's me was in front of that car, she was supposed to be number 4 state witness. She told the police that when she comes to testify, she will say the truth, she will not lie. And she told the judge that the 2 police officers, a Mr. Uyoya and DIO Mr. Mulimba, went to this woman's house to tell her that they were going to give her a diplomatic job and money if she says it's not her who was in front of the car, but Mumbikiri. This woman refused. And I reported this. I've been talking about it because to me that was proper corruption, to corrupt somebody, to implicate an innocent woman to get convicted over a crime I did not commit.
So what's your question? What's your question?
My question is, Mr. Mono was on radio and I reported that this is proper corruption. Why haven't you arrested these officers for corruption? He said he will look into it on which case they should act on, others they should let them go scot-free because they are supporting what the people in government want to do to innocent people.
Okay.
That's my question.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure how much. I'm not sure how.
I followed. Yeah, but I mean, two things really. Generally, what I can speak is, I think in our case, it's a problem of abuse of knowledge. But unfortunately, the law says you can't question the entry of knowledge. But I think that is something that would require revisiting. But again, I'm not there to give legal advice over on your show. But I think that is something she's legally represented. That is something that she can pursue. But coming back to the point that we are saying, when you have a knowledge, it's not an acquittal. Therefore, you are not entitled to damages for malicious prosecution. I think that is what the law is.
Okay. 226-841-097-889-5895. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. Morning. Yes, it is. What's your name? Okay. Go ahead, Patrick.
I want to make a question. With the last program,
Yes, you're live on radio. Go ahead.
I want to find out the issue of current matters that is pending in the court of law about a lawsuit. I think which President Edgar Lungu, President Edgar Lungu, I think, sued the state about the issues of this package. And then we have the Attorney General siding with the state. And the question is, in terms of the Constitution, why is the Attorney General siding with the state? I was thinking that Edgar Lungu is suing, or so to speak, the state as the former president. And the office of the former president is, I believe in my own view or understanding, is part of the state. So I want to find out the dichotomy between when does the Attorney General side with the state, and second question is that in the previous regimes from 1964 all the way up to I think up 1991, we didn't have a lot of these constitutional checks that I think currently now, every time now and then we're having people going to the constitutional court. What used to happen then and what is happening now? Could the council explain exactly why did we have many constitutional issues then that was not before the court of law and as I'm like supposed now? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Patrick.
Yeah, two things. Just to clarify, without going into the merits of the cases that are in court. Former President Lungu, when you occupy the office of president, when you leave that office, you become an ordinary citizen. Okay, that is why we say former president. You have no rights beyond the only thing that you walk away is immunity for things that you may have done whilst in office. But otherwise, you're just an ordinary person like any other. And is no longer represented by the Attorney General. The Attorney General continues to represent the state. He's a private individual, therefore he has to fight for his rights like any other private person. The other point about why we having more, I think, if I get
his question was, why do we have more constitutional checks today, nowadays, than we had from 1964 to about 1991? Why are there more constitutional checks, people going to the Constitutional Court now more than previously?
Well, I don't think there is, you can say more. I think we don't have the statistics. Okay, if we had the statistics, then we would confirm that. But maybe what we can simply say is that I think we are talking more about the Constitution than we did previously. And I think that is what would give the impression like there are more of these issues. But I think it is important because if you look at 1964 to 1991, you see if people are well taken care of by their government, they don't care who is running government. Okay? But when things go off the rail, that like what happened after from 1989 onwards, we have had problems. So people are now questioning these things. So there'll be more and more of these issues, just like, for example, we've been talking about this issue of local government, where we're now saying, no, wait a minute, these issues are covered in the Constitution. Minister, you have no powers to do this. Local authority, these are your powers. Can you make sure that you play within your areas of, within your own respective jurisdiction and so forth. But also, I think there is also another point, which is the fact that access to information is easier. Okay? Right now, on my smartphone, I can pull up a copy of the Constitution. Whereas in the old days, you needed to go to the library to get a copy of the Constitution. So information is easily accessible. Those are some of the advantages, but the question is, are we able to, if information is easily accessible, the point is that, are we consuming it? Okay.
So, I mean, when we were planning this conversation, you and I, obviously, cholera and everything, came up, but we really wanted to delve into issues to do with access to information. So I'm going to try and be as brief as I can,
yes,
but see if I can still extract as much as I can,
yes,
from you in terms of access to information. So this is a piece of legislation. I want to say one thing first. In this country, we have many wonderful pieces of legislation.
That's true.
For whatever reason, they gather dust, nobody uses, we seem to forget that they exist.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have access to information, something that people have been crying for a very, very long time.
Mm-hmm.
There are some people who think it's a bad piece of legislation in the way that it's framed.
Mm-hmm.
You've gone through it. Do you think it's a bad piece of legislation, or is it a means to an end?
Well, it's a sham. Basically, it's a fraud on the people. But let me give you context to this very briefly. The first initiative to have this, we used to call it, it started off, but let me try and give you a bit of background. I know we're running out of time. In 1991, we were all excited about democracy. We were all looking for ways and means of how do we consolidate our democracy? How do we strengthen our democracy? And by that time, the only means of access of information was through newspapers, and then there was only private newspapers which were just emerging. All other forms of mass communications were owned by government. So I think in 1993, if I remember correctly, there was a gentleman called Mike Ho, who was the editor of Post newspaper, and a few others. They came up with this report. It was a private initiative where they said, okay, we have these statutes on our books that are actually hampering our work as journalists. So we needed to have freedom to do these things. So they came up with a list of pieces of legislation. I think if I remember correctly then, the Minister of Information was Deepak Patel. They submitted a report. As usual in this country, that report was buried. Nothing happened. A few years later, in 1999, the late Newsted Zimba became the Minister of Information, and he put together another team, but this one was driven by government, which I was privileged to chair, to come up with, to recommend, we called it Media Reform Committee, to come up with pieces of legislation which were necessary to reform the media. I think there were other people that were part of that committee. I think I remember the current Chief Justice was part of that committee representing the Law Association of Zambia. Now, our approach was twofold. We said these are the pieces of legislation which undermine press freedom and make it difficult for the media to operate. And we concluded that it's not enough to repeal these pieces of legislation. We needed to enact legislation to empower the media to be able to do its effective role as the fourth estate that everybody talks about, to play its role as a check on government, to be able to inform the people on what the government is doing. And that is how we came up with, one of the things we recommended was the enactment, we called it then Freedom of Information Act. That's what we started with. That report was submitted in 2000, January, exactly that would be 24 years ago, okay? That other report is, okay, it's at least 15 years, but here we're talking about 24 years. Successive governments have given lip service to it, and now it has morphed. We're talking about access to information. And finally, on 26th December, the president signed that into law. And everybody went into excitement. Whoa. But the problem is this. When you pass a legislation, the legislation is not an end in itself. It is a means to an end. The end being allowing people to have free access to information held by government and government-related institutions. Okay? First, there is no way democracy can function without information. And that is why today everybody's just spreading stories and checked and unfounded. If I pick up a story somewhere, I have to double check it before I run with it, because otherwise I end up in trouble. Because most of it is based on hearsay. Now, access to information was a useful tool. For example, if I hear that, for instance, the government has spent so much money on doing ABCD, instead of running with that story, I would go to government to say, can you confirm? So that if I get that information, I can now present a solid story with facts, as opposed to running a story on conjecture, which is very dangerous. But there is a problem with that act at many levels. For me, the critical factors were these. First of all, the issue of oversight. Okay? The oversight. Now, you have a problem in the sense that the information holder, once you present your request for information, has 7 days within which to tell you whether they'll give that information or not. And then, if that 7 days lapses, then it means that it is deemed that the information has been refused. Then what do? You go to the Human Rights Commission. Now, that's where trouble starts. Okay? Now, there is no period within which the Human Rights Commission has to decide that. There's no period set. But what is provided for is that once the Human Rights Commission has decided, you have 30 days within which to go to the court. Again, there is no limit to where the court would, when you are going to get your answer. So the whole system collapses. It's a farce. Okay? That is where the problem is. Again, you see, these are statutes that are passed simply to tick the box. There is absolutely no intention that they work in reality. But you must also, for the purpose of this access to information, you need to understand the background to this. Why now, after nearly 30 years of government resisting? Very simple. This particular act is part of the conditions for the restructuring of our debt. That is what was imposed. So you have a government that is already reluctant. It's not something that they did willingly. It is something that was forced on them. Now, having done that, you have a sham of a piece of legislation where you have, first of all, problems. There are so many exceptions through which the information can be rejected. So many. Now, from a functional point of view, it won't work. And not only that, I mean, Human Rights Commission, of all the institutions that you can think of, would dominate. This is another institution that was created purely to tick the box. Not that it has any function. Or what has been the impact of the Human Rights Commission in Zambia? Zero for the years that it has existed. So there is no way you can expect such an institution to be effective in terms of implementing the terms and the provisions of the Act.
I wonder whether another problem is that those that are appointed to be commissioners, for example, at the Human Rights Commission, are appointed by the president. So all of a sudden, allegiance lies with whoever sits at that State House.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, that's exactly. It's a sham. Okay? It's a fraud, basically. It's something that you do for the sake of it anyway. Because the point is this. When you look at, you see, the mode of appointment of people to institutions is very critical. You know, you have to know, but why was I chosen? Okay, invariably, there is an indirect way of telling you, because you begin to peddle the thinking of the appointing authority when you go there. And that's exactly what has happened. So really, it's something that was being done for the sake of pleasing the donors and so forth. But the intention is good in the sense that one of the problems we have had is a lot of things are done in secret by government. Now, we woke up all of a sudden we find ourselves with a debt of $15 billion. We have no idea how that money was used, how it was spent, where it went. Absolutely no idea.
Or the T's and C's.
Okay, but here we are. We're all suffering because of that debt. We're even struggling to have that particular debt restructured. Okay, but the point which is there is that it was a tool that was meant to empower us to have a say, to know what is being done in our name at any particular time. But because of those shortcomings, it's not serving any purpose, and it won't serve any purpose, unfortunately.
Okay, but do you not think that it's a good thing that there is this piece of legislation? Because what's the worst, I don't know how to structure this question, but it's harder for you to bring about access to information if there is no act, if there's no piece of legislation. As it is now, there's a piece of legislation that allows parliamentarians to go and amend. So that's a good thing, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
If they are willing to make those amendments.
Yes, if they are willing. But the point is, why make it difficult in the first place? Okay? Because you should have, first of all, have a very liberal approach. It should have been made easier for people to access information. And when you realize that not the information people are accessing, they're abusing it, then what do you start to do? You start restricting it. But you can't start by restricting so that you make it impossible for that whole system to work. And that's exactly where we find ourselves in.
And so we'll make assumptions here. Unfortunately, it'll be a lot harder for amendments to be made now, because then it makes it look like, what were you doing all along? Didn't you not see these gaps and loopholes? Correct?
Exactly. Because when you have the act, you know, all these things you're supposed to go through them. Where you begin, okay, you have provided for this. How will it work? How will it operate and everything else? Okay, you are trying to design something. Okay, it's like putting together a car. Then you have to have a clear understanding as to what will happen. You make it easier. Is the intention to make it easier?
Or to make it harder?
Or to make it harder. Is the intention really to allow people to have access to information? Yes, then make it easier.
I was talking to somebody, I can't remember who, and I said, look, the test of the pudding is when people try it.
Yes.
So when you go out and test whether or not you're able to access this information, that's when you now truly see whether or not this piece of legislation works.
Yes.
So now there are two examples I want to throw you away. First of all, Andy Ford Banda, who is president of PAC, he's been trying to find out from ZCCM IH, you know, who the holders, who is responsible for this IRH, this equity partner from Dubai.
Yes.
He's been asking this question to ZCCM for, you know, I think almost now 3 weeks, and there's been no response on his end.
Yes.
The Zambia Business Times, they've also been querying something with the Ministry of Tourism, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
They've also not gotten a response as well. I think now we're going to almost a month plus. This, again, the test of the pudding is...
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, but you would have expected that, you see, there's that excitement. Since these are the initial cases, they'll be favorably considered and information given. But what do you have? Complete silence. Now, there is a provision in the law where if the information holder is not able to give you information, they have to write to you to say, give us more time. Now, in the case of the ZCCM one, I understand it's just been complete silence.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, that's lawlessness. You can't do that. And you can easily see, if you can't, at least tell me. You won't give me the information so that I can go to the Human Rights Commission. Okay? And then let's see what happens to the Human Rights Commission. But the question that also comes in is, has there been adequate education? It's one thing you can't just throw a piece of legislation like that. But if you've taken time to educate people as to what the implication is. So these are all problems. But I can tell you, based on my review of the Act and the few examples that you have seen, I don't have much faith in that. That was just an act passed to simply tick the box, not that it will make any difference.
Lombe says, and I find this is a very interesting take from Lombe. He says, talking about the National Assembly being highest policymaker, and he also says, look, one of the biggest challenges with the National Assembly is that it's influenced by party whips to pass legislation. And so you, as a member of parliament, you end up towing the line without you being an independent thinker, even though you represent the political party, because your vote is essentially whipped by party whips. Is there a problem in the way that legislation is done in this country?
Well, there isn't a problem. That is what you would expect anyway. But you assume that the legislation is meant for good, okay? But not just a sham legislation, okay? Because again, that would be that would be a problem for you to break away from the party. You expect it to toe the line. So the expectation is that your political party is doing the right thing. But now, once it sets out to do something that they know, most of these things that they do, it's not like they don't know what they are doing. They do them deliberately. They have absolutely no interest in living up to the promises that they have made. Okay, so these are some of the problems. Because there is nothing wrong, nothing stops these people from doing what is good for the country. Nothing stops them. So when they do bad things, out of choice, not out of ignorance. That law is an example. They could have made it so simple, very simplified, okay? Because there's a provision which says that the act has to be construed on the assumption that information will be given. Then you make a long list of exceptions. You defeat the whole purpose, okay? Statutes like that should be made very simple. Let's see how they are going to work in reality. If we see data is coming out to say people are abusing this, then you find a way to tighten it somewhat in a way. Because any piece of legislation has to be a product of its own environment. So you have to plant the initial seed, which must be a very simple seed, and then let's see how it's going to germinate. But you can't start by tightening here, tightening there, and then you make it impossible for the whole system to work. And that's where we are.
Were you surprised? We've got two last questions. But were you surprised, or have you been surprised by this, all of a sudden, that we do have these regional groupings? And there was one that put out a press statement regarding or advocating for the appointment of a foreign affairs minister coming from that particular region. Are you surprised by this?
I mean,
or nothing surprises you anymore?
No, it's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, you can't, in the 21st century, to insist that a particular person from a particular tribe or a particular region should be appointed to government office. Now, anybody, in my view, anybody who advocates tribalism or regionalism is not fit to hold public office. And if he does, such a person, if it's an elected office, such a person should never be elected to public office. The reason is we have made a lot of strides to make sure that we stand as one Zambia, one nation. No tribe has a monopoly of intelligent people. No tribe has a monopoly of uneducated people. This country can only be developed on meritocracy. Let's put people to office because they can deliver. At the end of the day, for example, if we have our Ministry of Local Government, all the local authorities are functioning correctly, and we don't have cholera, everything is moving properly, who cares where the region that the Minister of Local Government comes from? Who cares? Okay? The determinant is performance. It is actually a shame that this day and age we can promote such kind of practices, because in any case, in the past, if they ever worked, they have never worked. So we need to grow up as a country and be progressive. You know, at the end of the day, we have to make a choice. Do we want to progress or not? If we want to progress, then we have to do things that will move this country forward. But if we want to remain backwards, okay, that's a choice we have to make. But those kind of discussions are totally counterproductive. There is another point. First of all, that is a violation of the Constitution, by the way, because the Constitution prohibits discrimination based on tribe, based on your race, religion, and so forth. So that already is so you cannot accord benefits to people based on their tribe. You can't. That is already a violation of the law. Okay? And that is why, for example, I don't know how much time we have, but
let's see if we can do 7 minutes.
Yes. If you recall, we have made a lot of progress in the past to try and make sure that we have a popular president. Okay? What is the rationale is, when you are president for the whole country. You're not a president for your tribe or for your region. Now, if you recall, those who remember this, in 2001, we had President Manawasa elected by, I think he received less than 30% of the votes. Or for the electors, or for the votes cast, he got less than 30%. And some people, I mean, they basically described him as some kind of illegitimate president because 70% of the voters did not vote for him. And when you look at reports after reports of the various constitution commissions, people have advocated for something different, to say, we need a popular president. That is how you have this clause which says, for you to be elected president, you must receive 50% plus one vote. Now, there is no way you can get 50% of the votes from your region. There's no way. And that is supposed to bring about unity in the country so that you have acceptance from all the people in the country. The current president got at, is it 59%? There is no way his own region would have given him 59%. So, under this particular government, tribalism should be the last thing on the lips of the people, people's minds. Okay? That should be the last thing that should come out of the people's lips, because we have demonstrated what it means to stand as one Zambia, one nation. This government is a direct beneficiary of that slogan. Now, what it means is that it was only possible, the outcome of that vote was possible because people chose to say, let us do what is in the best interest of the country. We are voting. This one, Lungu, we don't want. We have to try this one. That is why you saw people from all over the country, they voted for the current government. So we shouldn't be talking about tribalism. We shouldn't be talking about regionalism. These are backward concepts. But I've heard these arguments where people say, oh no, this region was marginalized during PF, what and what. I have no problem with that. But you need data to support that. The law recognizes that not all regions are the same, right? There is a concept of what they call affirmative action, okay? Where government will now come up and say, oh, wait a minute. In terms of education, the people in Eastern Province are backwards in relation to the rest of the country. For example, if the literacy rate in the country is 70%, and then in Eastern Province is 40%, Eastern Province has fallen behind. So it is the duty of government to say, how do we lift the literacy rate in Eastern Province so that we bring it on par with the national average? Then government may have to make a deliberate policy to pump in more money in Eastern Province, okay? But that has to be based on data. It has to be an objective policy that will not only begin and end with a particular government, but even successive governments will be able to implement that. So these are all things that we are engaging in, which are mere distractions, totally unprogressive. What we should be doing is, how do we grow the economy? How do we address the challenges that the country faces? Not to try and promote one region over the other. Those are backwards ideas.
James has our second last question. So James says, do you think we have laws in this country that punish us as a society in terms of it being more punitive rather than managing proper conduct in society? And he gives an example of speed, these speed traps, these speed cameras that the Road Transport Safety Agency have put out. So you implement speed trap cameras against lack of credible road signages. Mm-hmm. Is it more punitive than what you should be doing is saying, look, how do we get all of you to understand that this is the speed limit in this area, rather than quickly? And I can
it reminds me.
I can make a conspiracy theory as to why they do it this way.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You see, there is a problem. Okay, what is the objective of speed limits? It's safety on the road. But the problem is that this is not being viewed as a revenue-generating measure, which is wrong. Yeah. It is completely wrong. Okay? I'm sure you have had certain situations whereby the traffic officer even hide. Okay? When you pick up speed, all of a sudden you find a police officer coming, trying to stop you. There is a joke which a friend of mine said to me, he said, but I didn't see. This is now a trap. Then the police officer says, yes, that's why it's called speed trap. You know, but it shouldn't be. the objective is safety on the road, not revenue generation. That is the problem. If it is safety on the road, then you have to make sure that, first of all, the road signs are clear, are visible. Most of the road signs are not. Okay? And then the police officer, they say, but you should have known. I said, but how should I have known? Because they says no. When they say, but there is a sign. I said, the sign is maybe a kilometer away. You know? But all these are issues we need to address. Do we want to use these speed traps to generate money or to create safety on the road? The primary thing is safety, which means that, first of all, the roads must be properly marked out. So that when you speed, you have chosen, then you have broken the law. But when the roads are not properly marked and everything else, then it becomes a problem. You know, but the primary objective of those limitations and everything is safety on the road.
Okay. My very last question to you is, and I'll preface this by saying, one of the things we've spoken about this morning is about education and information. This is a very delicate thing to ask, considering everything that's happened in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But do you think that more and more of our citizens need to become educated and informed, and it being less sensitive, the conversation around the Barroso-Land Agreement?
No, I think, you see, for you to be progressive as a country, every subject should be on the table.
Yeah.
You must talk about
Yeah.
it. Because when you don't talk about it, it doesn't go away. Okay? Yes, it's a genuine problem. Okay, it's a genuine issue. If you go back, historically, you can't fudge data, unfortunately. One of the greatest gifts of the colonial government was their ability to keep data. Now, it's clear, from 1924 up to 1964, when this territory was under direct administration of the British, although it was run as Northern Rhodesia, Barroso-Land was a protectorate within a protectorate. Whereas laws were made for the rest of the territory, for the rest of Northern Rhodesia, Barroso-Land occupied what you might describe as a special status within that. And the question at independence was, what is going to happen to this special status? Do we emerge as one? And this is where the strength is, that this country is stronger and better when we stand as one, as opposed to being broken up. The people of Barroso-Land decided to say, we would like to emerge as one Zambia. The question is, we have certain privilege and benefits that the rest of the territory do not enjoy. So how are you going to safeguard these? That's how the Barroso Agreement came up. Now, along the way, that agreement has been breached. We need to discuss that. It won't go away. It won't die. So what is required, because successive government have just been pushing it, ignoring it. Now, but the point is that it's a documented issue. Even if the people were there in 1964, signed the agreement, are long gone. But the issue is documented. We need to find a solution. What is it that the people of Barroso-Land want? We need to have that conversation and see whether we can have a revised version of the agreement, or whichever way. We need to discuss it and find a solution. I have no idea what that solution would be, but it has to be something that is acceptable for the rest of Zambia and the people of Barroso-Land. And then we bury this issue once and for all. And there might even be another idea where people have said, well, Barroso people, what do you want? Maybe you can have a referendum. You can have a referendum for people, Barroso, to be able to decide whichever way they want. But whichever way, I don't have a solution, but it is necessary to have a discussion. You know, when politicians lie, people die. What is required is openness. Because when you're a politician, you're not there for yourself. You are there to serve the people. You dance to the people's tunes. So if you disagree with the people, explain why you have disagreed. Okay, the problem with our politicians is that when they go into power, all of a sudden they become very intelligent. They surpass the intelligence of every other person. We lose nothing, but let's discuss it. If we can reach a settlement, we find a settlement. If there is no settlement, you can have a stalemate and leave it to the people. Just, okay, sorry, we can't accommodate you. What do you want? At the end of the day. But at the end of the day, we must realize that Zambia is a unitary, indivisible state. Okay? We need to have this conversation. We can't bar it like we have done in the past.
Dear Councillor John Sangwa, thank you very much for coming on the program this morning and indulging me in a conversation that was not a conversation that you'd have in a bar.
Thank you very much. No, you can't have this kind of conversation in a bar.
I wanted to use that phrase.